Hi, it's Jan Beta, and this is something so special to me that it actually took me ages to build up the courage to work on this. And I have to apologize to Dennis, aka Retro Game Revival on YouTube. Nudge nudge, check out his channel. He donated this like, I don't know how long ago, probably at least a year ago. And it has been sitting here and laughing at me all the time. And I didn't have the confidence to work on this, let's put it that way, and procrastinated this for quite a while. What makes this so special is that this is a first generation Amiga, and in fact this was only called the Amiga when it came out because there were no other Amigas. Later people called this the Amiga 1000. And that's how I'm going to refer to this when I speak about it, Amiga 1000. As I said, Dennis donated this. He found this at a flea market in the Netherlands and kind of immediately sent it to me after having it himself, realizing that he was more interested in gaming consoles and such. And I think at the time I did a couple of Amiga videos, as I do, very regularly on my channel. And he saw that and thought it would be better off staying with me. Yeah, my personal connection with this is actually as a kid. This came out in 1985. And around that time I got interested in home computers. My father got a C64 around that time. And he brought home a lot of computer magazines and stuff. And when this was released, it was all the rage in the magazines. And they were like printing reviews of this, and I saw pictures of the graphics capabilities that this can achieve, which were, I mean, at the time they were really mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing what this machine could do. So it was a dream machine. Unfortunately, Commodore, when they released it, they priced it so high that it remained a dream machine for many people. It was just, and it was not quite powerful enough to be considered a professional tool computer. So once again, Commodore messed up the marketing for this in the beginning. So they sold it too expensively, and it only came with 265K of RAM. This one has the additional 265K RAM cartridge, which you could plug in the front. It's missing this door here. This like a part of the case clips on. That's missing on this one. They have to find a way around to get a new piece in there at some point. This is a really special machine for me because it was a dream computer for me, as for many other people. And I read the articles in the magazines, and sometime later my father actually got an Amiga 500, which in the end is more powerful than this. But this is the original machine that started the whole Amiga story, and that's what makes it really, really special. These are rare too because they didn't sell many of these, at least compared to the Amiga 500s and 2000s and 1200s. This is a much rarer machine than these. So I'm going to try to do my best to do a nice restoration of this. You've probably seen me unbox and test this actually on my Patreon if you are a Patreon supporter of mine, which I can only recommend if you are interested in stuff that I unbox a long time before you actually see the video about this. In this case, apologies again. But I actually tested this and it works. The only thing that I couldn't get to work is the disk drive. So what I want to do today is to just figure out if this still works. It has been sitting here, as I said, quite a while. And if we can actually make it boot. Okay, I have this plugged in. And the last time I started it just booted without any issues. On-off switches on the side here. By the way, we have to look at the design of the whole machine in detail. I'm going to do that in a bit. Probably going to do it again after the restoration. Yeah, but look at this. It still works. Gray screen is absolutely normal, I think. And it takes quite a while. So this generation Amigas didn't have the kickstart ROM built in, so you need an actual kickstart disk that you have to insert to boot the ROM into the RAM, and then you can boot like normal Amiga disks. Let's see, I actually have a disk with the kickstart ROM. Yeah, this is the kickstart disk I have, which is actually kickstart 1.3 for the Amiga 1000. This came with the kickstart ROM my father bought for his Amiga 500 back in the day, when the Amiga 500 originally came with kickstart 1.2. And my father bought a ROM chip, actually. This was part of the package, basically. If you bought the 1.3 ROM, you got the ROM on disk too for the Amiga 1000, which is pretty nice. And it comes in handy now. I never thought I would use this, but my father held onto it and I held onto it until now. And now's the moment I'm going to use this. This has a pretty rattly AC fan inside, by the way. The drive is clicking, but it doesn't see the disk for some reason. So I definitely have to take a look at the disk drive to see if I can make that work properly. And it also got a bit bent in shipping. Oh! It wasn't in all the way, it seems. Ah, so this little knob got a bit bent and didn't come out all the way. So the disk didn't go in all the way. It seems now it's loading the kickstart, actually. And it's resetting. And now we should have like a normal Amiga startup screen. Yes! We do! Very nice. Okay, let's see if we can boot something. Yeah, this has to come all the way out. Yay, okay. It's totally working. That's really nice. I haven't got the sound hooked up at all because I wasn't expecting this to work right away. Nice. Yeah, so this is actually working without any problems, it seems. Turrican 2 just booted after booting the kickstart disk without any issues. Of course, this machine being really old, I had a look inside in the first video on the Patreon, behind the scenes video. Otherwise I wouldn't have turned this on right away. But it seems to be in really good nick from the inside, so I just turned this on now. And yeah, I still want to do some restoration work on the electronics, of course, because there's an old power supply in there that's probably not very reliable. I will have to take a look at the fan, which is really rattly and loud. And yeah, I want to clean up the disk drive and replace some capacitors on the main board. The usual things. So let's have a look inside before we abuse this anymore and run games on it. Let me take a second to thank PCBWay for sponsoring this video. If you are active in the retro computing scene, you've probably heard of PCBWay or even tried out their products. They are a manufacturer of prototyping PCBs and also larger scale projects with very great quality and fast turnaround times. If you haven't tried their services, you definitely should check them out. Well, I'm genuinely excited about this thing. I can't. It's difficult to describe. This is like a dream coming true after like years and years. I always wanted to have one like this because it's a beautiful machine. You can't really tell. This is in a pretty poor state. But the whole design is really spot on, I think. Look at the keyboard. It's a beautiful design. Kind of a modest design, similar to the early Macintosh design, I think. And it's really well thought through with the memory expansion in the front and stuff. It's really cool. You can also fit the keyboard under the machine. It's, yeah. I'm going to show you around the case for a bit while this is still closed. Okay, so the front, the original one came without the Commodore logo, which is kind of ugly, but it's, yeah, I think it's okay. It just belongs to the machine. But it looks better without it, actually. So you only have the little sleek little Amiga logo. Then you had, of course, this was covered. And you have the drive, which looks like the A1010 external drive. That's the design to go with the Amiga 1000, actually. So they designed that. The lines are the same, basically. And I think it's the same drive in there, the same bulky metal shielding that the A1010 drive has. So the keyboard fits in here. Don't have that. I removed that for now, for showing the machine. But it looks really sleek. It's not very high. It's a lot smaller than the Amiga 2000. You can't put many expansion cards in this because it's so small. It's basically kind of like the Commodore 128 from a design point of view. Like you get a desktop case with a drive in it and an external keyboard, but there's not much room for expansion stuff. So here it is from the left side, where you have the on-off switch, and has some nice lines. This is a bit broken. There's some little pieces broken off. This is actually, there's some texture to this. It's kind of stripy. Looks really nice. I like the lines of this, just a perfect design. So here it is from the back. This is where the keyboard connects. I think there were also versions with the round DIN connector, but I'm not quite sure about that. If you know, let me know in the comments. Parallel port, this has a little slightly bent pin, we have to take care of that. This drive, I love that it has the little symbols. The early Macs have that too. This is a serial port, which has a phone with ones and zeros. Stereo sound output. This is a monitor. RGB out. This is the output for a TV modulator. This doesn't have an internal TV modulator, but you have to connect an external one, which is, I guess, really, really rare. There were probably not many made or used of these. The power connects here, mains power, just an IEC connector, three-prong IEC connector. I think this has a composite out that's actually a color composite out. This is the composite output. And here's the grill for the fan. So this is the right side with the joystick ports, and mouse and joystick ports actually. This comes with an angled tank mouse, or it came with an angled tank mouse. I think I have one of those from an earlier haul of Amiga stuff. Didn't think that I would ever need it. Of course, you can use a normal Amiga tank mouse on this as well, but the original Amiga tank mouse had an angled connector to take up less space on the side here. This actually is the expansion connector, the exact same one the Amiga 500 has, with an edged connector. So you can plug in an expansion with you can actually plug in some Amiga 500 expansion cards. And the cover is missing for this. This comes with a little cover originally. So the case actually screws in. The screws come from the bottom, so you have to flip it upside down to remove the screws. I already removed the screws and I didn't put them back in, because the case is rather brittle and it's clipped in with some clips as well. I'm going to be as careful as possible with this. Yeah, it's difficult to get off. So there we go. Yeah, similar to the old Macintosh, the first Macintosh computers, this has the signatures for all the people who worked on this in the case lid, just carved into the mold with which this was made. It also has threaded, like little metal inserts for the screws, which you don't see on later Amigas actually. So this is like not built down to a price actually, so it's pretty well made, except for the case being a little flimsy, but it's probably because it's old, it got a bit more brittle with age, I guess. But yeah, this is just beautiful detail. Okay, so here we are inside, and as you can see, the mainboard looks a lot different from the later mainboard revisions, and that's because there's different chip sizes on there, different packages, and they also cost reduced quite a few of the little logic chips on here away on later revisions of the Amiga architecture. Basically, it's the same architecture, but with a lot more components. And yeah, basically not considering price such an important thing. So I totally want to take this apart further. I'm not sure. Probably have to get everything out here. No, it's not. Okay, this is the RAM expansion that you can just pull out. We have to remove everything anyway because I want to really thoroughly scrub the case because that's really dirty. Yeah, let me disassemble this. Okay, first step, let's get the drive out. I think I had this out before. Just putting a little marking where the one goes. Don't want to mess this up. So the drive seems to just be attached with 4 screws. Let's see. So this is also screwed in with these standoffs that are doubling as yeah, they are holding the joystick ports in place or strain relieving them basically. So yeah, I have to get these things out. Flathead screwdriver. So using my pocket knife on an Amiga 1000, who would have thought? Yeah, I didn't really screw these in all the way after last time, knowing that I would disassemble this again. I only thought it would happen a bit sooner. I think this might have come with an RF shield all over it, but I'm not quite sure. Yeah, totally feels like it. Oh, and it's actually cable tied. There's a little cable going to the LED in the front, and that's cable tied down. So let me get this off. Then I actually have to cut the tie there. Okay, there we go. Oh, and there's another connection, ground connection, okay. Okay. There's another ground connection going to one of the posts where the PCB is sitting on. So this is an old school Matsushita drive with a Namiki motor, it seems. Wow, Hitachi chips. Panasonic, Matsushita is Panasonic basically. Cool, and there's the little ground tab where our thingy was attached. Okay, and it's totally completely in a metal can. It's a model JU36303 made by Matsushita Communication Industrial Company Japan. Okay, so this is kind of non-trivial to take apart. I can see screws going down the perimeter here that I probably just have to remove to get the circuit board out. And there are little metal tabs because there's probably a shield from the whole backside there. These are the little metal tabs I was talking about. Probably have to just twist them and they can fit through the holes in the PCB, and then I can take out the whole PCB after removing all the screws, of course. Yeah, let me just remove some screws, I guess. There are silver screws on the side that the power supply sits. Okay, this should be probably the same part for the 2 expansion ports. Maybe we can leave that on. Let's just try to remove all the screws that seem to be attached to the bottom case. Just get a small pair of pliers to turn the little pins. Yeah, I guess there was a metal shield on top somehow. Otherwise these don't make that much sense, I guess. By the way, the whole PCB is made in Japan. This the serial number. Made in '86, it seems. Okay, let's see. These definitely have to go. They screw into the power supply. Oh, that's it, I guess. Or is it? I think the whole back assembly comes off, actually. Is there another screw that I didn't see? There's no screw. Wow. Totally don't want to destroy this. Ah, there we go. Whew. Okay. It's the connector for the power LED, I think. Wow, so you really have to angle this out in a way. It's not very convenient. There we go. Ooh. So now how to get the power supply out of here? Don't see any more screws. Just seems to be like clipped in some weird way that I can't understand. I'll probably look that up. There are some. It seems there are tabs from it going through the case here on the back side. So it turns out there is like an iFixit.com step-by-step teardown of the Amiga 1000 online. I'm going to link that in the video description. Probably should have looked earlier for something like that. And I read there that actually this back panel should be... You should be able to lift that out together with the PCB. And it's kind of stuck. I don't know if I want to risk this. I should also be able to remove the front panel. I don't know how. It should just slide out. It seems to be stuck. I don't know why. A lot of things seem to be stuck that shouldn't be stuck. And I also saw in that teardown that this should come out. Oh, now we can get rid of the front panel here, which is pretty nice. Okay. And this should come, if I tilt it like this way. That's kind of an unusual construction. There we go. Wow. So this kind of, there are these metal hooks that are clipped into the case. So you have to angle it and like kind of pull it a bit. Wow. That didn't feel good. Hope I don't have to disassemble this more often. Yeah, I think the back panel, this just comes out now. And this is really, it feels all really brittle and like didn't age very well. The plastic seems really brittle, and there's a couple of cracks and stuff that I have to take care of. I kind of want to just give this a good wash, actually. And the LEDs seem to be just clipped in. Yeah. So it's probably the same on the other one. Yes. Wow. So here's some broken off parts on this hinge that locks the whole front panel in place. Otherwise it doesn't look too bad, given that it feels really brittle. Most of these are intact. So from the iFixit teardown, I could also see that the original Amiga 1000 comes with a huge metal shield on top of the PCB as well. That wasn't present in mine, but that's okay. I probably would have removed it anyway. Don't know if I would have removed it in this case, because it's such a... I'm aiming for a restoration that stays as close to the original thing as possible, I think. I already have some ideas on how to achieve that, but we're going to see about that. Yeah, I think I just want to put the case parts into some water, some soapy water, and soak them and scrub them and see how much of the dirt we can get rid of. So here's what looks like something with guarantee, which means, I suppose, also means warranty in Dutch. Yeah, it's like Verfallsgarantie, which probably means like a warranty void. If it's pretty similar to German, so you can most of the time just go. I can read Dutch pretty well, so I'm just using some lighter fluid on this to see if I can remove that. I'm just going with the fingernail method because I don't want to damage the plastic. This way I have most feel in it. I might need to revert to another more medieval method. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe this works. Yeah. You can see that it is slightly yellowed. I'm probably not going to do retrobrighting on this because I don't want to make it any more brittle than it already is. Most of it is dirt, I guess. I'm just going to get this off fine. Yeah, it is pretty dirty, you can already see that. Yeah, basically I want to take this to the bathroom and give it a good bath. So I'm just going to let this soak for a while, like this, while looking at the electronics. So let us take a look at the circuit board, and I think I just want to replace all the capacitors. First of all, this looks really, really neatly arranged, different to the other Commodore machines. And that is probably because the main design was done by J. Miner, who also designed much of the Atari 8-bit product line. So those are really neatly designed, and this also is. So it's more similar. It looks more similar from a design point of view to an Atari actually than to any of the other Commodore machines. So it's all really nicely parallel. There's a lot of resistors and capacitors in groups, and yeah, it just looks a lot neater. But functionally, of course, the other Amigas are the same, if not better. I don't know. But yeah, this, of course, is a very nice circuit board. And I think we should be able to remove the bottom shielding, which is like, yeah, it's like a metal shield covering the whole bottom. And I think we should be able to remove this without removing any more screws. This is just held in by these little metal tabs that I've shown you before, I think. Let's see if we can get this out in an orderly manner. Yeah, seems we can. Oh, there's one more here that I overlooked. There we go. Okay. This is just a piece of plastic to insulate the rest from this metal shield. This could use a bit of cleaning too. So here's some of the famous custom chips, some of which are in these ceramic cases still with the gold plated pins and the gold stripe on top here. Beautiful stuff. Here's our processor, CIA chips, 8520. And the processor is a real, genuine Motorola part. They later used different manufacturers too. These seem to be the ROMs. And there's I think you can retrofit a Kickstart ROM if you use these unpopulated locations here. I think they planned on putting that Kickstart ROM on the board, but didn't have the time. So they ended up just putting this, I don't even know what this is called, like a rudimentary, like this is like very similar to a BIOS or something, where the system is not really in the ROM, but kind of a very rudimentary disk loader that allows a system to be loaded, which in this case is the Kickstart disk. So here's our RAM, it seems. That's an interesting, there's like different chips. Very interesting constellation, I guess. Yeah, these have to be the 256K of RAM. And there's a capacitor that has one leg lifted. I think that was kind of, I don't know if this is intentional, I guess so. First off, I would just want to do what I always do and replace all the capacitors on here with fresh, good brand ones. That's one thing I do very often, like replace capacitors. When you work with old electronics, or let's say elderly electronics, then that's just a thing that becomes necessary after a while. And there's like common values of capacitors. This has a lot of 22 microfarad ones, 220, 470, 100, I think. Yeah, it's standard values. I should have plenty of those, I guess. So let's see how far we get. I'm just going to recap this whole board, and it's pretty neat that these are all lined up pretty nicely. There's only one here, and the other ones are on this area. So not much chance to miss one. Very neatly designed. Okay, let's get the recapping on. Firing up the desoldering station. And I'm going to try to be as careful as possible. The soldering on this looks pretty weird. Sometimes the through-hole stuff is only soldered from one side. They did not do a very good job on some of the solder joints. Maybe I'll go in and redo some of those solder joints. But on the other hand, it totally works, so that's probably going to be alright. Definitely going to do some cleaning of dust and stuff while I'm at it. The board is really thin. They got better boards with the Amiga 2000 and stuff. I think even the Amiga 500 boards have a bit more meat to them. It seems the positive is marked for the capacitors. And it seems to be correctly marked too. That's a good sign. Well done, Commodore, for once. Or Amiga Incorporated. Oh, they are kind of clipped in. These are bent, so they grab to the PCB. Hate that. I hate that. Yeah, but it's going to be alright. Now that I know that, I'm just going to be a lot more careful. And yeah, do my best not to damage it. 100 microfarad. 100 microfarad. This was a 16. Yeah, and this is a 25. You can always go higher voltages. and stick with the same capacitance, but don't go too high with the voltage. So I'm using a 25 volts capacitor in place of a 16 volts rated one. In nearly all cases, I would say, is completely okay. And yeah, will work fine. If you go too high with the voltage, the properties of the capacitor are going to change a bit, so it might not be fine. Yeah, the soldering job on these, let me show you one thing close up. Can you see this chip here? That's completely at an angle. I mean, it's soldered in properly and all, but wow. This came from the factory like this. So that was recapping the mainboard. Not too bad actually, there's not too many capacitors on there. They were all really neatly arranged, so it was quite a quick thing to do. But some quirks to it. There's no large heat-sucking ground planes except for on this one here, I think. That took a while to heat up. The other ones are reasonably easy to desolder, except for, in this case, on my board, I don't know if this goes for all Amiga 1000s, the legs are bent, so they grip into the circuit board like this. So they are bent inwards. And you have to wiggle a bit and pull a bit more than you would normally have to do if the legs were straight. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. I think all the polarity markers on the board are correct, as far as I can see. I am going to check with the photos I made of the board to be sure that the polarity is correct. Always a good idea to take good photos of all parts of something you are assembling and of every step, basically. Yeah. I take video of most of the steps, so sometimes I have to go back to the videos to see how something comes together or comes apart. So yeah, it's always good idea to do that. So all my polarities seem to be correct. So I'm just going to go in and clean everything up a bit. Just using some IPA, which is isopropanol or isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to give this a good scrub, because it looked quite filthy in parts. The cool effect of doing this with isopropanol is that you get mildly drunk while doing it. So I think I'm just going to leave this to dry for a while. Just giving this bottom part a little wipe down as well. Yeah, I think this is pretty clean actually. Still a bit of a wipe, and then I'm going to wipe the plastic part a bit more. This is probably just dusty a bit. nearly as good as new, I'd say. So technically, by far, the more important piece to recap is this power supply, which is rated plus 5 volts, 8 amps, plus 12, 1 amp, minus 5, 0.25 amp, which is a quarter of an amp. Interestingly, this doesn't seem to output minus 12 like the other Amiga power supplies. First of all, I want to open this up and have a look at the capacitors, and if I have all the values available that are in here, I'm just going to recap this as well, because the capacitors in these switching power supplies usually are put under a lot of stress because of the high frequency switching, and also there's like high voltage capacitors in here that also have a lot of work to do. These are usually the ones that fail first, the ones on the circuit board, in case there's parts of on some computers there are parts of the power supply also on the circuit board, but in this case I think the power supply is just this and just delivers the voltages to the main board. They are, I think, filtered again on the main board, but this does the main thing and the heavy lifting. So the capacitors in here will be pretty stressed out, and the capacitors on the main board were fine. These are probably more prone to failure, even though, as you've seen, this works fine. So they are pretty okay, and still no idea if they are perfect. Probably not, because they are made in '86. So let me see if I can crack this open. There are screws here, probably for this bezel here. There are screws on top, and I think I managed to look inside by just removing these before. So probably, maybe, we're going to be able to open this up by just removing these screws. Yeah, we are. Okay, nice. There's one 180 microfarad, 400 volts capacitor that I know right off the bat that I don't have. These are 2020, which I have. 100 microfarad, 1 microfarad, 4.7. I think I have all the smaller ones, I just don't have this big one, which is kind of a bummer. Yeah, this is kind of an old power supply. I might replace this altogether, I guess. I don't know. It's like there's like a 7805 in here. This is 7805 with a proper heatsink, at least. This seems to be properly made, but it's just really old. Yeah, massive diode rectifier, full bridge rectifier. And this massive 400 volts capacitor here. The small ones I could replace without any issues. It also has this quite noisy fan attached to it, which I don't really like, because it's like a high voltage fan. You can see here the fan is directly hooked up to the AC voltage. It's like the mains input is directly hooked up to the fan after the power switch. Let's see if I have enough capacitors in stock to recap all the smaller ones. The bigger one, yeah, I have to order one, I guess. Okay, let me see how we actually get this thing apart. There are screws. I should probably wear this wrist strap again, because you never know. There's a screw here, screw here, screw there. Okay, let's just try removing all those screws. And one more here. Yeah, I think it's moving already. Yep, so the fan is actually connected to the AC. this plug here, which I maybe can get out with some force. Wow, this is packed pretty tightly. Okay, get this out. We probably have to get the, this is the on-off switch. We should unscrew this and then we should be able to slide this thing out of this case, I guess. Let's see. The switch is pretty filthy anyway, so probably a good idea to remove it and clean it a bit. Okay, there we go. Now maybe I can get this out here. Oh, there's another. I have to get rid of this connector as well. There we go. Okay, this ground connection goes to the case, so that should be fine. Should be able to push this through here in some way or the other. So maybe now we can just pull this out. Yay! Okay. Piece of cake! Haha! So unfortunately I lost my discharging tool, which is basically a resistor wired up to two banana plugs, and I can discharge large capacitors. You can of course also just short them out, which is what I'm going to do. Just to make sure you don't get shocked by a 400 volt capacitor like this, because you don't want that. That hurts. Or maybe worst case can also affect your health in a non-positive way. So this one I'm going to have to order, but I can replace all of these, which is what I'm going to do now. So I actually desoldered all this whole lump of capacitors that are glued together. I think I can just, I can just remove them in one piece. Yeah, kind of funny. I don't really need to do this. Which is this one? So what I'm also going to do is to replace the 7805. This is a 7805A that I suppose I can just replace with the 78S05 that has a bit of a higher power rating. It uses a bit more current, draws a bit more current in idle, but it runs cooler generally, so I tend to replace the regular 1 amp rated 7805 regulators with the 78S05 rated, that are rated for 2 amps, I think. So yeah, I should probably have done this before replacing the capacitors. Yeah, there's no thermal compound on there. I can put some thermal compound on there as well. Doesn't seem to run very warm. Pre-bending this a bit. So this should do. Let's see. I'm going to put some thermal paste on there, I think, just for good measure. Because I can. I'm just going to put some thermal paste on all of those, I guess. Because basically it helps with heat conductivity. And it's a huge mess. It's also a huge mess. Okay, there we go. This is a single-sided board, so we don't have to wait that long for the solder to flow. Usually with a double-sided board I tend to wait a bit so the solder can flow through the board. Okay, pretty nice. Let's have a look if we can put some thermal compound on the other transistors and such. Yeah, there's like nothing on there, okay. I'm just going to need a strip of cardboard or something to apply it. Hang on. Okay, here I am with a nice little cardboard strip. Just going to put some on here. You only need ever so little. Don't really need much at all. It's already too much probably. But oh, this does work. Nice. Actually never tried that before. And there wasn't anything on there. Usually you would have, if there's old stuff on there, old thermal compound, you would have to remove that. But in this case, we can just go in there and put some in there because there wasn't anything in there. Okay, let's do that for the other transistors as well, or at least the ones we can reach. Yeah, that works really well. But I would have to desolder everything to get to these two here further back, which I won't do because that's not really worth it. I am going to add a dab of hot glue to this stuff. Let me just get the hot glue gun. Okay, now we have one pretty nicely refurbished power supply, except for the one big capacitor. I'm actually going to take a note of the pin spacing on this one because I want to get the right one. 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter pin spacing. I have to note that. I have to write that down. And then order one accordingly. I think they are much smaller now from the outer dimensions, but the pin spacing is important to have it sit on the board well. Oh, one more thing. For these power supplies, especially for the switching type of power supply, you want to use 105 degrees Celsius rated capacitors. That's the operating temperature where where the hours they can survive basically is guaranteed. Usually these power supplies come with 105 degrees Celsius rated capacitors. I use them all the time, even for stuff where there's no heat involved, but these get warm. There's the fan in there is for a reason, basically. So yeah, use 105 degree rated capacitors in these. Usually you want to use low ESR stuff in switching power supplies as well. Yeah, the modern caps are all lower ESR basically. If you get good brand ones, they are lower ESR than the ones that were in here before, so we are going to be good anyway. So let me see if I can actually get this together without destroying it. Yeah. Just using some IPA and a good scrubbing with the microfiber cloth here. It usually works wonders. Oh, this has to go in. Ah, there we go, okay. It wasn't all the way in, so we have to, yeah, now it works, okay. Ah, now. The screws in the back here are the ones that had the washers, actually. So then there was another one over here. Very nice. Not too bad. Okay, let's put the lid back on. Oh, let's slide this cable back in. And this should just plug in. Yeah, there we go. Okay. The whole power supply is pretty clean. I'm quite surprised because there's a fan. 2 screws on the top, the little ones with the flatheads. I suppose we could have a test run now and see how well everything went. Yeah, let's hook this up to the monitor and just see if it still works with the new capacitors in here and with the new capacitors on the board. I sure hope so. Fingers crossed. Okay, also connected the disk drive for good measure. Let's hope this still works and doesn't blow up. Okay. Fan still spins, that's a good sign. And the disk drive spins. Yes! We actually still have the Kickstart logo, that's good. So I'm going to leave this running for a tiny short time to see if anything starts smoking. But yeah, so far so good. This looks really promising. Yeah, had this running for like 30 minutes or so and it's just rattling away with the fan. But it still blows out some air, so that's good. It doesn't get warm at all. Some of the chips get pretty warm, especially those ceramic ones, but I don't really want to put heat sinks on those because they are historically important, I guess. And I guess if I put it back in the case, there's going to be some airflow over those chips. They don't get like really warm. It's nothing to worry about, really. Just like the normal Amiga chip warm. And I don't put many heat sinks in Amigas, so yeah, they're going to be fine. While we wait for the missing capacitor for the power supply, we might as well take a look at what state the case is in now that it had been soaking for like a couple of hours. I don't even know how long this took, but it's already starting to get dark, and I started like after lunch, I think. So it's been a while. I forgot the time a bit, but working on a project like this always makes me kind of forget the time. Okay, I'm just going to leave this to dry for a bit. I feel like I couldn't get everything off, but it's a whole lot better than before, at least. A couple of days later, and I got myself some nice big Nippon Chemicon capacitors for the power supply that I'm going to put in now. And as you can see, both of these capacitors are the snap-in type, which means they have these like twisted a bit terminals, which you can then yeah, they basically grab into the circuit board, so that is pretty sturdy. That makes a pretty sturdy connection. Very nice. Okay, let's put it in. Should fit perfectly. Yeah, there we go. And it snapped in. Probably you heard the snapping sound there. You definitely don't want to put this one in backwards, because this one sees a lot of voltage. Clip the leads and off we go. Let's see if this still works. Yes, it does. Yay, success! So electrically this is now probably quite stable, I would guess. I'm still going to have a closer inspection of the board, but I think this episode is long enough already. Probably I'm going to split this into 2 separate episodes. There's a lot more work to do and I have more plans for this. So let's have a look at the case, how that turned out in the meantime. So here we are. It's still kind of a bit scratchy and there's a lot of dents and stuff in the plastic, but the color seems pretty much back to original. Yeah, this top part is really scratchy, but there's not much we can do about this. I considered maybe sanding it, but that doesn't make sense for plastic, I guess. This part turned out pretty nicely. One side is a bit more yellow, this side. And the only part that's really significantly yellowed is this back plate. That's really yellow. You can kind of see the original color on top there, where no sunlight got. And the rest of it, yeah, this would be kind of the original color. And this is how yellow it is now. So I might consider retro-brighting this in the next episode. What do you think? I don't know if it's worth retro-brighting. I have to do some repairs on the case anyway, because there's some brittle pieces that have broken off, and I'm going to try to repair those in the next episode, hopefully next week. And I'm also going to do some more work on the disk drive. I have to clean that and re-lubricate that, I guess. And yeah, there's probably going to be more little things that I can do. And I'm also going to have another look at the power supply fan, I think, because that is a bit scratchy and noisy. And we're going to see about that. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode of my Amiga 1000 restoration. More to come. Hopefully next week there's going to be another episode about this one. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who watched this. And special thanks go out to my Patreon supporters who make these videos possible. Thank you so very much. And extra special thanks, of course, in this case, go out to Dennis, who donated this machine, which is awesome. So thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Patreons. Thanks, everybody. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Jan Beta. See you next time. Bye.